Petrowich here with Marion head football coach Kerry Martin as we hit the midway point of the football season. Week 5 coming up this Friday night. The Wildcats end their 3-game road trip with a game in Mount Vernon in the South 7. But as we always do, first of all, Coach, let's talk a little bit about last Friday night's game. 41-18 win over Cahokia, and I'm sure going into that game you were expecting something a little bit different. I don't think you necessarily expected to be able to win quite as handily as you did.
Well, we felt like the game plan was good, but the way the kids executed it was even better. I was real proud of the way we came out from the first snap. We really played good, solid football. I thought in every facet, offense, defense, special teams, we executed really well and minimized our mistakes, which is something we talked about we need to do, is reduce our mistakes, and just a good overall team performance. And of course, we're at our best when we've got kids playing at that level, playing together, cutting down the mistakes and executing the offense and defense.
You had a variety of ways to score early in that game, and we talked about the early start, but 20-0 at the end of the first quarter. But I think Cahokia only ran like 8 or 9 offensive plays, and that included a series where they ran one play through the lateral that they dropped and let go, and Jared Dortz picked it up and ran it in for a touchdown. Usually when you have a defensive score like that, the opposition gets a few more offensive plays, but you really controlled their offense, especially their running game.
Yeah, the first half they didn't get a lot of opportunities, and we would put them in some situations where they had to throw the ball, and I think the early scores made them a little more one-dimensional, where they had to throw to get back into the game, and that helped us, I think, defend them a little bit. They wanted to run their sweep game and their ISO game, and then when they fell behind 3 touchdowns, they had to kind of abandon that game plan and go to their rollout passing, and we just had the job of keeping everything in front of us.
33 yards rushing is all they had, and I know you want to try and make a team one-dimensional, and when you can shut down a team like Cahokia with as much speed as they have to allow only 33 yards, that's an outstanding defensive effort.
It is. Defense played really well. They played fast. We played what we call a high motor. I thought our level, our quickness level, our pursuit to the ball, our angles were better. There were a lot of things that were just improved, and of course now the challenge is to continue that. But I was real proud of the way the defense seemed to step up their game to meet the challenge of Cahokia's speed and athleticism. They did a really nice job.
And that people look at the box score and see they threw for 255 yards, and that might be a concern until you look where most of those 255 yards came from. They got a lot of yards late in the game against the second unit defense. Even so, they only allowed the one score. You got an interception deep in their territory, in your territory. You held them on 4th down late in the game. So that second defense gave up a lot of yards against their first unit offense, but you really didn't give up very many points.
No, and you're right about the second defense came in, gave up some passing yardage, which helped pad the stats of Cahokia. But I think the other thing is our second team kids backed off quite a bit and gave them the underneath throws, as they should do. When you're ahead by that many points, you just want to make sure you force them to drive the ball. And I thought our second string defensive kids did very well. I thought they created a turnover. You said made a great stop on 4th down, and I guarantee you, Cahokia had to earn every yard they were getting. Those kids played really well for us, and we're starting to see some other kids in our program step up their game and improve our team overall. And that's what we've got to have. We're at our best when we've got more people contributing. And I think we're starting to see more kids catching passes, more kids running the ball, more kids involved in the tackles and picks, and just an overall team effort. When we do that kind of stuff, we're a pretty good football team. And when we start this individual stuff that we did a little bit earlier in the season, we struggle.
Matt Lewis had his first start Friday night. Pretty solid effort. 12 for 18, around 200 yards passing, and a lot of it was screens and shovel passes. We talked about that, but that was part of that game plan that you set up, but he did have some nice downfield passes as well.
He did. Good, solid performance. He did a nice job managing the offense, kept our tempo and kept our rhythm, and did a good job for us, and I was real pleased. It was a tough night to be your first start, facing a very aggressive defense that plays a lot of tough man coverage, and he didn't try to do things that weren't in the game plan. He had some great non-throws where he could have thrown it and didn't take the chance, took the sack, and got a first down maybe the next series or the next play or whatever. And so I was real pleased with the decision making he made and what he did, and I just thought it was a great start for Matt.
We've talked about this several times, and this is one of the things that becomes a key for good football teams, and that's the way your special teams played.
Right.
They only had one long kick return all night, and it was not across midfield. It was to Cahokia's 47. You were able to pin them inside the 20 a couple times. Sean got a couple of touchbacks. But you're punting as well. You know, Brett did a nice job punting away from their returners and getting you some pretty decent punt yardage to keep them from setting up returns.
He did. Brett and Sean both did a nice job kicking the ball, and I think you're right, the coverage people have gotten better. And I think Brett put one out of bounds inside the 20, which that's a big deal. And, you know, they were forced to start several drives inside the 20-yard line, the 20 or inside. And that makes a big difference. And percentage-wise, you just increase your chances of stopping them when you put them back from the 20-yard or back. But our kicking game has been something that we felt struggled early. We've continued to try to stress that and get better at it, and the kids have responded.
Mount Vernon this week, and you really have to feel bad for the people in Mount Vernon. And maybe you'll feel a little worse for them next week after this game is over. But I believe last week going into the Althoff game, they had 15 of their 22 regular starters out with injuries. That's awfully hard to overcome. And I know that you've dealt with injuries with some pretty important players over the last few years, but I don't think anyone's ever dealt with having 15 of their 22 regular players out.
It's a lot. It's tough to be at your best at anything. You're scrambling with that many young players and that many backups, and tough situation to be in. You know, we can't look at that, and we can't, as a program, we can't look at that and breathe a sigh of relief and say, well, I know this. I've seen Mount Vernon on film. I know the tradition of Mount Vernon. I know they were banged up last week. But, you know, I think we're going to see a different Mount Vernon team. I think they're going to get some of those kids back. We expect them to play Marion extremely tough like they always do. We always prepare for the best a team can bring at us. And I would say that the Althoff game may not have been their best performance, and they might be saving that for us. So we've got to be ready, because I know the tradition there has been to play Marion extremely tough.
Well, last year they came into this game the exact same situation. 0-4, had some injuries, and even though they didn't win against you guys, they played a great game, and they got, even in a loss, got some of their swagger back, and they went on the rest of the season and won out the rest of the season. So, you know, they always come prepared to play against Marion, and this was a big game for them last year, and I'm sure they're looking forward to that this year as well.
I think you're right. I think after our game, they won 3 of their last 4 games, 3 in a row, and I think our game was the kickstart for the rest of their season, and I guarantee you, Coach Shaner's doing the same thing this week, telling them, hey, this is what happened last year, and this is what we can do again. And so we expect their level of performance to be up. I think they have a lot of pride in the program. They've been winning there for a 10-year period. They've had good teams in that program, and we've got to come to play. We can't look at the Althoff score and think it's going to be an easy night, because Highland became a ball game in the first half. First quarter, we fell down 14-0 and battled to a 21-14 halftime score, and didn't break away until later in the third quarter. We've got to make sure we don't keep them in the ball game. We've got to get out and play our game of football and not let them start getting confidence.
I haven't had a chance to see too much, but from what I noticed, you know, even with the new coach and the new staff up there, it looks like similar type of game plan. A lot of running. They'll throw a little bit when they need to, but they're going to try and run the ball.
Yeah, they do a nice job with their play action game and their boot pass stuff, and he's a jet sweep guy, and it's got a lot of stuff, a lot of movement to it, and it can be a challenging offense to defend. You can get distracted by all the different motion that you're seeing, so we have to make sure we're disciplined. We kind of have to approach it kind of like you would approach an option offense, and you have to do your assignment, and it's kind of assignment defensive football, which, you know, we've had to do before with Triad, for example, last year in the playoffs, but it takes discipline, and you gotta stay on top of things. It's not an offense that you can just cut loose and just play against. You have to watch your keys, and you have to stay disciplined.
Offensively, your team had its best week last week as far as possessing the football and not giving up the football. 1 turnover all night, and that was on a play that could very easily, if Cedric breaks the tackle where he got hit and fumbled the ball, and he got hit pretty good and they punched the ball out, but if he breaks that tackle, he breaks that for a long possibly score. So, you know, it's one of those things where you're an inch or 2 away from either turning the ball over or a score, but only 1 turnover after having 10 or 11 in the first 3 games. You have to be pleased with that.
Well, we have to get better at that. You know, these turnovers can be costly, and they were costly week 1, and we have to make sure we're taking care of the ball and making better decisions in our passing game, making better decisions in our running game as far as where to put the ball and keeping it high and tight and covering it up when we get into traffic. And those little things make a huge difference. And so, once again, we want to build on that and use that as a guide for the rest of the season, because we cut down on our penalties, we cut down on our turnovers. I think we made better decisions, and I think our kids did a much better job of reading their keys and carrying out their assignments. And so I hope this wasn't a one-game thing. We're stressing it again. This is the kind of football we need to be, kind of needs to be our signature.
You kind of specialized your offensive attack a little bit last week. We talked about that. Is that maybe going to be the case again this week? Or are you going to be able to have a little more variety in what you do offensively?
Well, I think they do some things different on defense than what Cahokia did, which brings about a different game plan. I shouldn't say newer game plan, a different game plan for this week. And I think, once again, it's going to be predicated on the execution of what we do. And in that first series, second series, we were able to get into our script on Friday and maintain that script almost the entire opening drive, and come right back in the second possession and almost do the same thing. But we have to approach this based on what we see on film, and hopefully we can put together a good game plan, which I'm confident we have, and go out and execute it, and continue, I think, to have good balance. And balance to us is a lot of different people getting their hands on the ball, and I think that makes Shaquille better, and I think it makes us a better team because it makes us harder to defend.
You keep talking week after week to these kids about the improvement they've made, and there's still a long way to go. How good can this team be?
Well, you never know what the ultimate potential is of a football team. I think at times we see glimpses of just how good they can be, and then at times we see glimpses of just how bad we can be, and a lot of it is based on, I think, how well we play together. And I think they're starting, at least in my mind, when I watch them in practice and I watch them in the games, they're starting to play well together. They're starting to develop a cohesion that I think is really necessary for great football teams to have. They have to start playing in such a way as to be accountable and to care about the guy next to them on the field. And I think the first couple of weeks of the season, we had 11 guys on the field. I don't think those 11 guys had any cohesion. I don't think there was any chemistry there. And I feel like weeks 3 and 4, we've started to come together as a team. And more than anything else, I think that's going to be going to decide just how good we can be, is how much they care about each other, how much they're willing to play and sacrifice for each other. And when you get that element in the game, they care more about their assignments and how they're carried out. They care more about protecting the ball, making the tackle, taking the good angle, doing the things they're coached to do. So I hope it's a sign of things to come. But again, it's something we're still going to build on and still stress.
And something I know you're hoping for Friday night. I was surprised to see it last Friday night. I think at the opening kickoff, I counted 110 fans in Cahokia stands last Friday night, and I think maybe Marion had about 300 there. So to have a fan base bigger than Cahokia at Cahokia, 2 hours away, I'm sure that's something you're hoping for this week as well.
I am, and we need that. Mount Vernon has always been a tough place to play, and our fans have been great everywhere we've gone. I think at Harrisburg, we had an unbelievably large crowd at Harrisburg, and to turn around during a break or change of possession to see the blue and gold behind us was pretty awesome, and the noise they made, and these road crowds have been great. Of course, home crowds are always good, but these road crowds the last few years have been awesome, and people have no idea how much that means. We've turned so many opposing stadiums into home games, in my opinion, and we'd love to see that again on Friday.
And of course, I'm sure that even though you'd like to have a big crowd on Friday night, you're looking forward to getting home too.
Oh, we are. We are. Our kids love to play here. We have a great atmosphere. It's exciting to be here, and we can't wait to get home. We know we've got one more trip of unfinished business before we can come home for a couple of weeks, so we're looking forward to it.
Marion head coach Kerry Martin. Wildcats play at Mount Vernon coming up this Friday. For Dateline Marion, I'm Tim Petrowich.